72 hours. That is how long the hospitals in Cuba had before their generators ran out of fuel. Not days, not weeks, hours. And the moment that clock started, Washington put $100 million on the table. What they didn't tell you is what the price actually was. Stay with me, because what happened next changes everything you think you know about this crisis. Wednesday night, 65% of Cuba went dark in under 40 minutes. Not a rolling outage, a cascade. Power stations in Havana, Santiago de Cuba, and Holguín fell offline one after another like dominoes. Cuba's energy minister appeared on state television and used a single word to describe the island's fuel reserves: agotadas. Gone. By 7 p.m., the streets of Havana were empty. Bakeries shut because ovens need electricity. Traffic lights dead. And in hospitals across the island, doctors were doing arithmetic that no medical school prepares you for, staring at generator fuel gauges and counting hours. If this is your first time following this story, pay attention, because this is not just a Cuba story. This is a masterclass in how modern geopolitical pressure actually works. Thursday morning, the State Department released a statement. $100 million in humanitarian aid, food, medicine, fuel, distributed through international organizations, not Cuban government ministries. That sounds reasonable. It is meant to. But then Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepped to the microphone and said the part that was not in the written statement. The leadership must change, not reform, not elections, not dialogue. Change, now. That single sentence transformed a humanitarian offer into something else entirely. Not aid, an ultimatum. And here is what nobody in the mainstream coverage is telling you. The offer was not new. Officials confirmed the same proposal was quietly floated through back channels in March. Havana never responded. Washington waited. And then, the moment the lights went out across the island, they made it public. The timing is not compassion. The timing is precision. Drop a comment right now. Do you think this offer is genuine aid, or is it a political weapon? Because the answer matters more than most people realize. Here is the structure nobody is drawing for you. The written statement asked Cuba to accept independent monitoring of aid distribution. Straightforward, even defensible. But diplomatic sources confirmed Washington quietly added 3 additional conditions before any dollar moves. First, Cuba releases a specific list of political prisoners immediately. Second, international observers gain access to monitor distribution. Third, and this is the one that ends everything, Havana must enter dialogue with Cuban exile groups about transitional governance. Cuba's government has not recognized exile groups as legitimate political actors in 67 years. Accepting that condition is not a precondition for aid. It is a precondition for surrender. And the State Department told reporters the offer had a deadline: conditions that expire. Humanitarian aid does not expire. Ultimatums do. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodríguez called it propaganda. Then, Thursday evening, he softened and used a word that stunned every analyst watching this story. He said Cuba would be open to discussing the details of the package. That word, discussing, had never appeared in a Cuban government response to an American conditional offer in 67 years. Not after the Bay of Pigs. Not after the missile crisis, not after the special period, not during Obama's normalization talks, where Cuba engaged only without preconditions. Rodríguez did not accept, but he moved the line. And in authoritarian systems, moved lines do not move back. President Diaz-Canel has not spoken publicly since the blackout began. 2 full days. State television ran pre-recorded content. His silence is not composure. It is the silence of a man who has no statement that doesn't make things worse, because defiance looks absurd when the lights are out, and acceptance looks like the end. Meanwhile, Russia issued a statement calling the offer blackmail. China reaffirmed Cuba's sovereignty. Moscow shipped 300,000 barrels of crude in April, a fraction of what the island needs, enough to signal loyalty, not enough to keep one hospital generator running. Beijing extended a $400 million credit line last month. And here is the detail that cuts through all the rhetoric. Neither Russia nor China offered to match the $100 million. Neither offered diesel. Neither offered the specific thing Cuba needed in that specific moment, enough fuel to get past 72 hours. Statements defend principles. Principles do not power dialysis machines. And every hour that Cuba's allies issued solidarity statements instead of fuel shipments, Washington's argument wrote itself. We are the only ones offering anything real. This matters because of what I have been covering daily across this entire series. The $100 million is not the beginning, it is the destination. The fuel blockade came first, then banking sanctions, then the GISA designation, then the Starlink offer built to be refused, then the failed state framing, then the Southern Command satellite imagery, then the phone call. Each move was designed to close one more exit until there were no exits left, only the door Washington was holding open with a price tag on it. The offer works whether Cuba says yes or no. If yes, the regime change condition triggers a transition Washington manages. If no, the refusal becomes the proof that the government chose its own survival over its people. Both answers serve the same objective. The offer is not the negotiation. The offer is the weapon. But here is the question nobody in Washington is answering. And it is the most important question in this entire story. What happens the morning after? Look at Venezuela. Maduro's removal created the chaos it was meant to resolve. Rebuilding functional institutions proved harder than dismantling broken ones. Cuba faces the same risk on a compressed timeline: 11 million people, decades of economic isolation, Soviet-era power infrastructure running at 30% capacity even when fuel is available, a military that controls 60% of the economy through GISA and will not surrender those assets voluntarily. An exile community in Miami that expects to lead a transition, but has not lived on the island in decades. And the deepest structural problem of all: if the government falls tonight, who keeps the generators running tomorrow morning? The fuel shortage does not resolve because a new flag flies over Havana. The grid does not restart because the leadership changes. $100 million is emergency relief. It is not an economic reconstruction plan. Rebuilding Cuba requires billions. No government, not Washington, not Brussels, not Beijing, has committed billions. The offer is designed to end a government. It is not designed to replace one. I want to speak to you directly for a moment because I have covered geopolitics long enough to maintain analytical distance from most stories. This one is different, not because the strategic logic is unclear. It is the clearest it has ever been in this entire series. It is different because somewhere in Havana right now, a doctor is standing in front of a room full of patients, looking at a fuel gauge, and doing math that has nothing to do with politics. That arithmetic does not pause for diplomatic timelines. It does not wait for conditions to be negotiated or ultimatums to expire. It counts down regardless. Both things are true at the same time. This is a siege executing exactly as designed, and there are real people whose lives depend on a generator that is running out of fuel. I do not know how to hold both of those things without admitting that analysis, as precise as it can be, cannot fully contain what is actually happening. So I want to leave you with the question that I cannot stop thinking about. If you were Diaz-Canel right now, generators counting down, 11 million people in the dark, $100 million on the table, and the price is your government, what would you do? Accept and end 67 years. Refuse and watch the countdown reach zero. There is no good answer. That is exactly the point. Tell me what you would choose and why. This comment section produces the most serious, substantive analysis of this crisis anywhere online, and this question deserves your full thinking. If this video reached something in you, hit like. One tap costs you nothing, and it keeps this work reaching people who need it. We update this story every single day, not weekly, daily. Every development, every signal, every silence that matters. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because at this point, we are counting in hours, not months, and I will be here for every one of them.